Hey, how are you? So this is all important. I have to tell you, this guy here, Richard Boyle, isn't going to jail, so don't worry about signing these. He's not going to jail. But there's a whole thing about him anyway, right? So if you read this, you're not going to sign this because it's irrelevant. What's important is David McBride and Dan Duggan, especially other people here, are also important. There is an appeal for Mary Costa-Guidas we haven't put on here yet. So all of this is very important. But you know, David McBride and Dan Duggan are both in jail now, and they shouldn't be. So they're very important. Okay, thank you.
Welcome to the 289th Julian Assange Sydney Town Hall gathering. If you don't have time for the truth, it may be because you are spending too long being controlled by lies. If you are listening to lies, you can't listen to the truth. When you listen to lies, you misplace your trust in liars. When you listen to lies, you become very narrow and you give up your ability to think outside the box. When you listen to lies, you don't have time to adequately care for yourself or the people you love. When you listen to lies, you open yourself to false hope. When you listen to lies, you find it important to avoid the truth. When you listen to lies, you lose your ability to critically think. When you listen to lies, you take on the values of the liars. When you listen to lies, you accept your oppression. When you listen to lies, you're persuaded that the consensus is against you having freedom, justice, or peace. When you listen to lies, you lose trust in your fellow human beings. When you listen to lies, your spirit becomes broken. When you listen to lies, you waste your hard-earned money on useless purchases. When you listen to lies, you do what you're told, even if you're told to do unethical things. When you listen to lies, you learn to conform. When you listen to lies, you let others make decisions for you. When you listen to lies, you stop standing up for yourself. When you listen to lies, you won't unite with others to hold governments and large corporations to account. When you listen to lies, you pretend to be happy. with a meagre existence. When you listen to lies, you become a useful idiot. When you listen to lies, you are fooled into telling the lies that you are told. When you listen to lies, you have low self-esteem. And when you listen to lies, money becomes the only reason to live. We must stop listening to lies. If you stop listening to lies, you will stop listening to the lies of politicians and to the lies of large corporations. When you stop listening to lies, you become able to work positively for yourself, the people you love, and the whole of humanity. When you stop listening to lies, you will become able to appreciate the telling of truth by Julian Assange, David McBride, Richard Boyle, Mary Kostakidis, and Dr. Miley Trin. Join us and learn the truth every Friday, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. here at Sydney Town Hall. The Assange movement continues. Free, free, free the truth. Free, free, free the truth. Free, free, free the truth. Thank you.
Well, I met Gerry Adams, one of the great patriots of Ireland, and the university here in Sydney, I think it was Sydney University or the University of New South Wales, said you can speak to the students provided you sign a statement that you do not preach violence. And Gerry said, yes, I will sign that because we do not, Sinn Féin does not preach violence. It's the British that have spoken of the violence against the Irish people for 300 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. Yes, it's.
Yeah, well, that's right. But as a kid, I didn't know much. But later, I found out that the British had these death squads going around and all kinds of things.
But I like one of the things that happened when the British were negotiating with the Chinese about handing over Hong Kong. So that's part of China, you see. Anyway, Mrs. Thatcher and others were haggling with the Chinese about handing it over in 1997. Anyway, the Chinese government got a little bit testy about it, and they said to the British government, this is 1997, not 1847. Well, there's a big difference. The British were kicking the world around in 1847, but in 1997, the boot was on the other foot. For the British. So even then, the British still thought that they could, dictate to the Chinese government in 1997.
Yeah.
But in 1847, the British said, now you're going to do this, this and this, and they had to cede Hong Kong to being part of Britain. And also, there was nothing wrong with importing heroin. Heroin is the part of free trade. So why speak against heroin? That's what the British government, of course, the Emperor, China, protested about it. He says, you're destroying our country, which is true. But the British argument was free trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that
which is he's offering free tickets to his documentary at the Sydney Film Festival, either this Sunday or the following Sunday in the afternoon. Are you available? Do you want tickets?
Alright, so hi, my name is Amilcar Infante. I'm a director of a film called Unwelcome that's going to be at the Sydney Film Festival. Our movie Unwelcome is a documentary that talks about a migration conflict that happened in the north of Chile with the arrival of thousands of Venezuelan migrants. And this generated, in the beginning it was everything good, but then this generated a conflict between people, and then the hatred started showing up. And this ended up with an awful anti-migrant parade where over 5,000 people from Chile and other countries marched against Venezuelan migrants. So I'm here to premiere the film, and I hope that everybody could see the film and we can talk about migration and maybe understand it better, because it's a really, really painful subject, and I think that we need to have that discussion way more in this world. So you're all invited. Thank you, partner. All right, nice to meet you guys. Bye bye.
We are all Assange.